Actually, I'm not the first Glatstein to speak on behalf of Prospect Park Yeshiva for Girls. My sister beat me to it. She represented her graduating class, the class of 2001, although maybe I helped her a bit with her speech. But I grew up seeing with my own eyes the transformative chinuch habanos offered by Prospect Park, and appreciative that my very own sister, who is now, Baruch Hashem, a mother of a Torah family, a beautiful family, was a beneficiary of this Moisad, a pillar of the Flatbush community, for now 90 years, Kein Yirbu, Halavai Vaiter. When we speak about the importance of chinuch habanos in the totem pole of Jewish causes, we're not speaking about an inyan that's important. We're not speaking about a significant institution. We're speaking about an inyan that is paramount, that in a respect is the very foundation of all of Yiddishkeit. It is well known, without beating around the bush, that in Europe before the war, there's a lot of revisionist history. But the true story is there was wholesale defection from Yiddishkeit, nothing less than that. In communities in Poland, in Galicia, in Lita, the Chafetz Chaim went so far as to write, Ein bayis asher ein shames. There was not a house in Klal Yisrael that was not affected by what was taking place. And there was a great goyin at the time from Slutsk, Rabbi Yaakov David Wolowski, known as the Ridvaz. He wrote a comprehensive commentary to the Yerushalmi. He wrote a sefer Chana David, Migdal David. Rabbi Yerucham Olshin showed me that he wrote a Perush al HaTorah called Nimukei Ridvaz. And in Nimukei Ridvaz, he studies, he analyzes what is the definitive cause of this wholesale defection before the war in Europe. And he attributes it unequivocally to the fact that even though there were yeshivas for boys, or many parents hired malamdim for their sons, there was no formal Jewish education for Benois Yisrael. And the girls soaked up the ideals, the values, and the heresy of the streets. And therefore, says the Ridvaz, if you want to know what caused the downfall of what was taking place in Europe before the war, there's no question. It was because there were no yeshivas for girls. And then the Ridvaz goes on to say, if you look in Parshas Boy, the Ridvaz identifies that this was the very Eitzah of Parai. Because Parai did not want to allow Klal Yisrael to leave Mitzrayim, not even for 3 days. But when the Makos intensified, and Parai realized he would have to let Klal Yisrael go for some time, so he says, okay, let's make a concession. Nu, tell me, mi va mi haholchem. Who's going? And Parai says, here's the compromise. L'chuna hagvarim. The men could go. Because Parai recognized that if the men go, and they hear Shiurim from Moshe Rabbeinu, and they go to a Yarchei Kala, and they hear Divrei Torah from Aaron, and from Nadav, and Avihu, and they strengthen the Yirah Shamayim, and the girls stay behind in Mitzrayim, soaking in the ideals of Mitzrayim, that's not a concession. There will be no Jewish future. And Parai says, L'chu na hagvarim, let the men go. To which Moshe Rabbeinu responded, not a chance. Binarenu uvizkeinenu nelech, bivanenu uvivnaisenu. Says Moshe Rabbeinu, if our daughters don't come out of Mitzrayim to learn in the Midbar, there is no Jewish future. Moshe Rabbeinu understood that for there to be a future for Klal Yisrael, there needs to be education for Benois Yisrael. 65 years ago, there was a controversial bris milah that took place in Yerushalayim. This was the bris of the grandson of Rav Moshe Chevroni, was also a grandson of the Ger Rebbe, and this bris milah was a who's who of the Gedolei Yisrael. You had at this bris milah the grandson of the Chafetz Chaim, the Alter of Slobodka, the Alter of Kelm, the Alter of Navardik, the Slonim Rebbe, the Vishnitzer Rebbe, the Ger Rebbe. If you were a somebody, your grandson was at this bris milah. And Rabbi Cheskel Sarna, the Rosh Yeshiva of Chevron, who knew how to stir the pot, began to do so. And Rabbi Cheskel Sarna posed the following question. Says Rabbi Cheskel Sarna, in the last 100 years, he says, which individual did the most for Klal Yisrael? He says, I know what everybody's thinking. He points out, you probably think it was your Zayda, the Chafetz Chaim. You think it was the Alter of Slobodka. You think it was the Alter of Navardik, the Alter of Klal, the Slonim Rebbe. He said it was none of them. And people got very uncomfortable. People started motioning to Rabbi Cheskel Sarna, shh, okay, enough already. Why are you picking a fight? It's a bris milah. Let's all get along. But Rabbi Cheskel didn't back down. He said, I'll tell you more. He said, the one who did the most for Klal Yisrael in the last 100 years never learned to blot Gemara. At that point, they started motioning to him, no, don't make a scene, maybe cut your losses, sit down already. But he went at it. He said, I'll tell you even more. When I say the name, you'll all agree with me. They laughed at him. But when Rabbi Cheskel Sarna said the name, they agreed as he predicted. The name was Sarah Schneer. In the last 50 to 60 years, there's a Torah renaissance taking place in this country, the likes of which the Jewish world has never seen in our history. Do you think it's a coincidence that the Torah renaissance that's taken place in the United States of America coincided with the Beis Yaakov movement, a system that Klal Yisrael has not had until the last 100 years? You know, Rav Aaron Kotler is reputed to have said, and I actually verified this with the author of a biography I'm going to tell you about. Rav Aaron Kotler said all the Torah in America is because of one person, Rebbetzin Vichna Kaplan, founder of the Beis Yaakov movement. So here we are this evening to pay tribute and to show our support, not another Mossad, but Prospect Park for Girls, who for 90 years has been grooming, molding B'nai Yisrael of the highest caliber. If I may, my sister told me last night that whenever she goes to a shiur in Lakewood, the front row of people who come to the shiur are always students of Prospect Park. And she was masbir because the Talmidos of Prospect Park have the confidence to think for themselves broadly. They have the tshuka for learning that it's a lifelong quest. So we're here this evening to pay tribute, not just to a Mossad, to one of the pillars of Klal Yisrael. And by supporting this Mossad, you are investing in the future of your own family, in the future of the Flatbush community, and in the future of Klal Yisrael. Thank you very much for coming. But I'm not finished. No, I'm not done. I'm just getting started. Right? We're here tonight also to invest in the future of our children, what we can do for the chinuch of our children, how we could offer them the best possible chinuch. I would like to share with you a perspective. B'shus the Rosh Yeshiva Shlita, b'shus the Hanhala, something that's very important in our generation. You know, Yaakov Avinu puts on his best costume, he puts on his Esav costume, and he comes before Yitzchak Avinu, and Yitzchak, he feels Yaakov, he says something's very suspicious over here. This individual standing in front of me, he feels like Esav, but the way he talks, he seems to be talking like Yaakov Avinu. Number one, Rashi points out, he invokes the name of Hashem. When I ask him how he came back so quickly, he says, Ki hikra Hashem Elokecha lefanai, that Hashem chanced the catch before me. So this individual is invoking the name of Hashem. This is not something that Esav would typically do, and Rashi points out another discrepancy. Esav would never be polite. Esav would never say please. Esav says, Yakum Avi, but this individual standing in front of me says, Kumna, please get up. And Yitzchak is very troubled. Who exactly is standing in front of me? But ultimately he says, it feels like Esav, and he gives the bracha to the individual standing in front of him. However, comes the Chassam Sofer, and the Chassam Sofer points out that there's a third discrepancy between the way Yaakov spoke to his father and the way Esav speaks to his father. And when it comes to this discrepancy, it certainly seems like Esav had more kavod for his father than Yaakov Avinu. Yaakov Avinu says to his father, Kum na, get up please. Second person. He addresses his father, second person, like he talked to your friend. Esav, on the other hand, says, Yakum Avi, will the tata get up? Third person, the way you talk to your Rebbe, the way you talk to your Rosh Hashiva, would the Rebbe like, would the Rav like? Ask the Chassam Sofer, how do we account for this discrepancy, which seems to indicate that Esav had more honor for his father than Yaakov Avinu. Says the Heilige Chassam Sofer, he says, I heard from my Rebbe, Reb Nosson Adler. But just to get a little picture, who Reb Nosson Adler was, Chassam Sofer once told Reb Shimon Sofer, his son, he said, I'm not one to exaggerate, but I want to tell you that my Rebbe, Reb Nosson Adler, was more familiar with the highways and the byways of Shamayim than a Malach Hashem. Says Reb Nosson Adler, there's a fundamental difference between the parent and child relationship by the Umayis Ha'olam and by Klal Yisrael. By the nations of the world, there's a certain distance, there's a disconnect, there's a generation gap, there's not a full closeness, and therefore a child refers to the parent in third person. But by Klal Yisrael, there's such an ahava, there's such a closeness, there's such a warmth between parent and child. There's an idea, says the Chassam Sofer, bra mezaka abba, a child brings merit to a parent. There's an idea, bra kara da'avua, Taisus and Yavamas brings. Bra kara da'avua, a child is the knee of the parent. When a child does a mitzvah, the parent could be in Gan Eden, the parent continues to go mechayel el chayel. There's such a closeness between child and parent. Says from Reb Nosson Adler, it's not appropriate for a Jewish child to refer to their parent in third person. A Jewish child refers to the parent in second person. I'll tell you something even more shocking. If you had to define, what does the word av mean? What does parent mean in Lashon HaKodesh? How would you translate the word parent? What's the job description of a parent? Perhaps somebody would say a teacher, a guide, an instructor, a caretaker. Listen to a Rashi, simple taich of Rashi. When the brothers reunite with Yosef for the first time, and the brothers are getting nervous, Yosef may take revenge, and Yosef says, don't sweat it. V'ata lo yatem shalachtem oisihena. Kiyim Elokim, vayisimeni la'av leparoi. The Rebbeinu Shalom made me a father to Paroi. Zok Rashi, listen to simple words of Rashi. Says Rashi, la'av lechaver ulepatrain, a friend and a supporter. Says Rav Shimon Schwab, Rashi is not just translating the word av. Rashi is defining what is a parent in Yahadus? What is a parent in Yiddishkeit? A father, a mother is a friend. That it is the duty, the responsibility of a parent to be the kid's best friend. Friendship is not an element of parenthood. It's not an aspect of parenthood. It's not part of parenthood. It's the very definition of being a parent. Furthermore, Reb Schwab says, another Rashi. In Parsha Re'eh, the Torah talks about what, in a way, Rav Moshe writes in a tshuva, the worst avera, the masis, the seducer. So the Torah says it doesn't matter who's seducing someone to do an avera of avodah zarah. Ki yisischa, achicha could be your brother. Ben imecha, bincha could be your son. Bitcha could be your daughter. Eishes chekecha, even your wife. And then the pasuk goes on to say, Oyreiacha asher kenafshecha, your soul friend. Who is this person? Who is this person in your life that the Torah HaKadosha calls Reacha asher kenafshecha? Zokt Rashi, listen to the simple words of Rashi. Reacha asher kenafshecha ze avicha. Your father, your parent. Says Reb Schwab, if you want a measure, you want a barometer, how good of a parent are you? Am I my child's best friend? That's not a description. That's not an aspect, an element. That's a very definition. Friends, who would know better than Rashi what a father is? You know what the Shita Mekubetzes writes in Baba Metzia? Rashi is Avihen v'Rabban shel Yisrael. Rashi is the father of the Jewish people. If I may, I want to share with you a teaching, literally one of the most revolutionary teachings I ever come across. Again, a simple Rashi. Let's go to the Akedah. Vayhi achar hadvarim ha'ela v'aleikim nisas Abraham. So Abraham turns to Yitzchak, and Abraham says to Yitzchak, let's go. What does Hashem say to Abraham? Vayomer Elav Abraham. How does Abraham respond to the Ribbon Shalom? One word. Vayomer Elav Hineni. Abraham responds, behold, here I am. Says Rashi, what does the word Hineni mean? Lashon Anova, the Lashon Zimon, a Lashon of humility, and a Lashon of being prepared. Hafla v'fela. A few moments later, Avraham and Yitzchak are headed to the Akedah. And Yitzchak is a little suspicious. What's going on over here? So Yitzchak turns to Avraham. He says, Avi, Tata, is that you? What's happening? Vayomer hineni beni. Avraham says to his son, Hineni, behold, here I am. Says Ram Gamliel Rabinovich, the Rosh Hashiva of Yeshiva Shar HaShamayim, someone who is oisek in the inyan of Chinuch Habanim, someone who is oisek in teens at risk. Says Rabbi Gamliel Rabinovich, one of the leading mashbiim today. From the words of Avraham Avinu, we learn that with the same humility that you speak to the Ribbono Shel Olam, with the same anivus you need to speak to your child. Says Rabbi Gamliel, why was Avraham Avinu zoicha to produce a gadol hadar like Yitzchak? Because he was mechabed his son with humility, the same way he spoke to the Ribbono Shel Olam. Says Ram Gamliel, what we ask of our children today, what we ask of our sons, what we ask of our daughters, to overcome the allure of the outside world, to overcome the temptations of the streets, and to live a higher life, we ask our children nothing less than an Akedah. And if you want your child to be successful of the Akedah of 2024, you have to make sure you equip them with the chizuk, with the care. Says Ram Gamliel in his experience, difficulties that young men and women experience growing up are because the parent doesn't show them the value, the kavod, and the humility in validating them and recognizing them for who they are. Says Ram Gamliel, there's no doubt in his mind the reason why Avraham Avinu was zoiche to produce a Yitzchak is because he spoke to Yitzchak be'anivos the way he spoke to the Ribono Shel Olam himself. A few days ago, I stood in Livorno at the original kever of the Chida Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai. Later on, he was moved to Eretz Yisrael. If I may, I want to share with you a simple Chida. Chida tells us in Parshas Vayetze, Yaakov Avinu was running away from Lavan, and Lavan catches up with him, and the pasuk says that they decided they're going to have a meal, and Yaakov Avinu needs some help, so Yaakov calls his brothers. Vayomer Yaakov la'achiv, Yaakov calls to his brothers. Says Rashi, his brothers. Yaakov Avinu doesn't have brothers. Yaakov Avinu has one brother, Esav, and Esav wants to kill him. There's no way Yaakov Avinu is calling Esav. Who are these brothers that Yaakov calls? Says Rashi, again, simple words of Rashi. Banav, his sons. Says Reb Chaim Yosef David Azulai. From the words of Rashi we learn, Roi la'av sheyachshoiv banav gedoylem ki'ilu heim achiv. A parent should treat their older children not as a superior, but like they're your brothers. Says the Chida, you don't have to do this. Uvezeh yiyu sheketim mishananim. If you want peace in the house, that's my personal recommendation. And friends, the Chida not only preached this, I found in the Shem HaGdolim of the Chida, when the Chida writes about his children, Chida says, Beni, Yedid Nafshi Reb Avram. Chida himself refers to his children as his beloved friends. This is what Yaakov Avinu tells his father. There's no disconnect between father and son. I don't need to speak to you in third person. The closeness and the friendship that I feel from you is so strong that I could speak to you directly. The Poisek Achra in the Chafetz Chaim. If you look in the Kol Kisvei Chafetz Chaim's son writes, our father treated us loy kebanim, but ke'ach u'chareya. So we're here tonight to pay tribute to this historic Moisad in the merit of us coming together this evening to show support to 90 years of Chinuch HaBanos, and that's the Chus Ribono Shel Olam should be makabel all of our tefillos. We should all be zoicha legadel banim uvnei banim, banos ubnei banos, meiram es haTorah, meiram es ha'olam b'Torah v'masim tovim, oiskim b'Torah v'mitzvos, ad bi'as goel tzedek, memher v'yamenu, amen.